live. Lewis from Gelato. How are you doing?
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great over here. How about you?
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, very good, very good. Very busy. It's a good busy. If I was doing kind of what I was doing a number of years ago, and I was this busy, I think I'd be kind of driving myself insane. But um, this space is so kind of fun and chaotic at the same time. So it feels like it's not a bad busy, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's a weird bear market, right? It's like doesn't feel like one. If you've been through the last one where it was basically everything was dead, no one was using or talking about crypto other than a couple of people building the stuff. I think it's pretty different this time. It's like, yeah,
It's
a lot of stuff going on.
it's a funny one. Even late last year, the said this a number of times. So if anyone who's repeated listen, I apologize. But Token 2049 in Singapore, I got there, went by myself, walked in, and was just kind of sussing everything out, speaking to people that I'd met online but never met in person, things like that. If you'd have kind of used that thing off Men in Black where they wipe your memories and then just drop me there at that point in time in the depths of like bear market hell and said, what is Bitcoin doing? I'd have thought we'd have been at like 100K or something. Everyone was so optimistic and everyone was just like really excited. And I was just like, are these people not like, are they mentally deranged? We've just suffered like the worst, like FTX fallout, like Luna and all that kind of stuff. But as you say, it's completely different to 2017 or even before that. It's everyone's so kind of, they can see what we're kind of working towards now, and it's quite refreshing. If obviously you kind of just brought that up, but yeah, we speak to people all day, every day, and it's everyone just knows that the space isn't going away anymore. So it's nice.
Yes, indeed, nice.
With a lot of guests, just kind of like just set the scene a little bit and kind of get your origin story and kind of what brought you initially into the space and how you've kind of ended up at Gelato and what your role is kind of day to day there.
Yeah. So basically, we started Gelato in the last bear market, exactly 4 years ago. Actually, it was April 2019 that we applied for a grant from Gnosis. So basically, it was my co-founder Hilma and I. Both of us had come out of the 2017 bull market, sort of entered crypto in 2016. We're super interested in Ethereum, of course. Sort of both of us quit our old jobs, started coding, all of that. And actually, then once we knew how to code and so on, we were like, okay, let's build something in Ethereum. And we saw that Gnosis had these grants for developers. It was one of the only things back then in the bear market. Everyone else was like, quiet and dead. So that was one of the cool things. We were based in Berlin back then, and Gnosis was running this cool co-working space called Full Node together with Cosmos back in the day. And yeah, it looked juicy, and it was like, okay, it was an opportunity. So we seized that opportunity and applied and built something. I think what was my first line written in Solidity. And actually ended up winning in this grant competition and won, like, for us back then, a big grant, I think $20,000, $25,000 or something. Yeah, and then from off of that, we decided to go all in into building. And before, we were already all in crypto, like sort of trading a bit, but also like really like into the tech and trying to understand everything and so on. And this time we were hands-on building, and we actually ended up the first use case we basically built for Gnosis was an automated withdrawal system for their now extinct Dutch X auction exchange, which was back in the day a really cool innovation. I think later, like, and today, there's mechanisms like this out there again, but Gnosis was a bit too early. Basically, an auction, a decentralized auction exchange.
Is that like what the Miso contracts are like now on Sushi?
It could, yeah, I think so. I think that it's probably very similar to that. Yes, and there's others out there. I forgot the names, but even Gnosis, like for some time, still had these batch auction, and I believe maybe Cow Protocol is still using some elements of that. Although I'm not that sure about that, but there were others, like I think Balancer had an auction mechanism for ICOs and so on. I'm not so sure, but there's definitely stuff out there that is based off that, I would say. And basically the problem with this auction was that, okay, the UX sucked because I mean, people were already a bit used to like HyperSwap back then, maybe Uniswap, like this sort of instant swapping. And with the auction, they would participate, and then it would clear a day later. So they would have to then remind themselves to go back and withdraw their proceeds. And obviously, that's like weird. I mean, obviously, there was a point. The point was to give them a better price and so on, but it still was sort of clunky, and it would have been much nicer if at least you didn't have to manually go back and withdraw. Like at least the tokens should, if it takes time, okay, but at least they should magically appear in your wallet when the auction settles, right? So. And that's what we sort of try to build, and this is essentially an automation. So we try to automatically withdraw from the auction for every user once it's settled to get their purchase tokens out of there. And then we realized, wait a second, this is actually turns out to be insanely hard. We both of us had coding knowledge from before, like in JavaScript and so on. And it turned out like in Solidity, EVM, blockchain doesn't just allow this. It's very different from a normal web server sort of environment where you can just run your JavaScript in what we call like an infinite loop or in an interval. And like every server out there, that all the applications we use, like the video software that we use right now to have this call, is basically some server somewhere that runs in this infinite loop and a program that constantly does something. This is not really possible in blockchain because everything has to fit in a block, right? So, and these blocks have to be finalized, and then a new block comes. So you don't really have these sort of infinitely running programs built into the smart contracts. They cannot do this. And realizing that, we then were like, okay, like what should we do? And we ended up building basically a server that did this. And then from there, we realized, okay, basically Web3 needs an automation protocol, like a second layer of servers that do all of these smart contract automations, many other things nowadays that we want to do with them. But it still needs to be decentralized. It's still like we still wouldn't want to take custody away from users, right? Like we don't want to suddenly become a bank running these servers or a Google running these servers. So basically we did this. Our invention was to allow for servers to service applications, smart contract applications, to provide automated use cases while still not forcing, like while still leveraging the power of smart contracts. So still not forcing users to give up their private keys or share their tokens with us or something. Like the users would stay in full control and custody over the funds, and still an application like Gnosis back then could use Gelato to provide automations on behalf of the user. That's sort of the invention here. The key invention is allowing servers and automation for Web3 applications while not giving all the powers to these servers. That's Gelato basically.
Beautiful. So you said when you made the move, what did you have any technical background whatsoever? You said quite handy with JavaScript or anything, or what was like what was that kind of learning curve like? So did you come from any kind of technical background whatsoever, or was there anything you could translate over, or?
So, I mean, both my co-founder and I, we were super interested in the tech, and we by the time when we started Gelato in the bear market 2019, we'd already been like sort of in crypto for I'd say 2 to 3 years. So end of 2016, mid 2016, that's the first time we heard of it, and so on. And then 2017, like really spending every day just trying to participate in ICOs, like reading about them, reading white papers. And to be honest, like you usually, like we also started a bit with trading, but I think 2 weeks into like just buying ETH and watching the number on Blockfolio back then, right? I was like, okay, actually that's not that interesting. Let's find out what was this about? What is Ethereum? What is this even? And then I got into the rabbit hole of trying to like reading technical papers. At some point I was still like doing my master's, and there was like in digital innovation and entrepreneurship, so it was like not really very technical at all. We also had like a small startup in Berlin at the time that wasn't technical at all. I was like delivering stuff and so on. But during that time, I basically even ended up in some GitHub where literally it was just Vitalik and Vlad Zamfir and so on writing about Ethereum, FFG, Casper, something. And I tried to make sense of it, but I was literally back then so interested that I just spent all summer 2017 looking at this stuff, quinting at it until it made sense, like or at least until 80% of it made sense, right? So I was just hooked. And if you really enjoy it, if you're really curious and you just look at this stuff for long enough, you read it over and over again, eventually some of it makes sense, right? So that's what I did. I was just fanatic about it, I guess. But I guess the secret sauce here for me to really shape my way and sort of give me the pathway into building in crypto was spending countless hours, days, and so on, and like reading the right stuff and going to the GitHubs and reading that. And I wasn't even a coder then. Like eventually I started coding. I did the thing, went to Udemy, like all by myself at home. Actually, I think in this room here in my parents' house. I even moved back in with my parents because I wasn't able to make rent and just basically coded here all day. And now I live obviously in Switzerland and by myself for a long time. But back then when I got into crypto, like building, I moved back in and just said, look, listen, please take me back in. I want to learn how to code and so on. And like half a year, literally in front of a computer every day, just teaching myself JavaScript, Solidity, all of these things. You can do that. Like you just have to want to do it, right? You go online, you find everything you need. If you like it, if you enjoy it like I did, there's no one stopping you. So yeah, that's basically my background before we started Gelato was, I'd say, like a couple of years in crypto, reading countless papers and so on. But in terms of actual coding, it was half a year, a bit more maybe of, beginners computer science courses, C, a bit of JavaScript, but very little, and mostly just Solidity and the beginner tutorials really.
Yeah. Man, that's fascinating. What's hilarious is I once thought that I was even remotely motivated to pick up JavaScript and then try and transition into Solidity, and then I still get the Udemy coming out of my accounts every month, and it's like maybe I'll go back to it one day. I know I'm not going to do it, but it's just the shame of deleting the subscription.
I have the same. I have a bunch of pre-bought courses in, I don't know, languages like that I would never use, and I have a bunch of books that I order online that are that just piling up and yeah, so unfortunately we have to make time, but
yeah, it's the same reason I don't delete Duolingo and just continue to pay for that, because I'm gonna learn all these amazing languages that I open up for 10 minutes and then go back to something that I know I'm actually good at.
Yeah it's that situation always.
With so we touched upon it a little bit there with the kind of backstory with yourself, and I suppose the Gelato origin story as well. So if people are listening, and what I can kind of imagine is a lot of people will be listening, they've definitely heard of you guys, but they might have a difficult time understanding, particularly if they're just on the investor side, like where you guys fit into the whole DeFi landscape. And maybe if it's just like we can start high level and then we can just dig down into each of the products and explore each of those a little bit more.
Yeah, let's do that. And totally actually, I think one of the things where we've maybe failed a bit so far is certainly in like general awareness, maybe a bit of marketing and so on around what Gelato really is. It's quite hard to understand for a lot of people because it's quite technical. Most of our users are like developers and protocols and applications. But the crazy thing is that since inception, like for over 2 years, like on mainnet, Gelato has been used by basically all of the big crypto projects, like, and also many small ones, but like, the likes of PancakeSwap, MakerDAO, Aave, Instadap, Multichain, Zrun, Connex, like all of these guys have been using Gelato in some shape or form. And that's actually super bullish because like we've had like real integrations from the start. You probably have used Gelato without even realizing it.
That's what I was going to say. It's like if you're listening and you heard of Gelato, I guarantee if you've been on chain, you've used Gelato or a Gelato product without even necessarily
knowing it. Yes, that's because we are like an infrastructure project. We saw in the backend, like sometimes far removed from the end user, even like our very user-facing products like limit orders. On PancakeSwap, SpookySwap, QuickSwap, these integrations are everywhere. But yeah, like that's the furthest we go. But it's usually still not hosted on a Gelato branded UI. It's like on a PancakeSwap UI or something, right? But yeah. So I think actually our ambition this year is to do a lot more there in sort of education about Gelato and outreach to people that are not just developers. Like everyone should really understand this technology that we're building because it's super amazing. It's powering a lot of the big DeFi applications, NFT applications. We have a lot of more things we want to do there. We also want to involve the community a bit more in the network. In the future, we're launching our staking for node operators, but also in the future, we have plans to launch delegated staking for community members, maybe, so that you can also participate in the economy of the network if you want to, even without running a node. But yeah, so I guess we'll jump into that. I don't want to front run you on that.
Yeah, no problem. So I think we touched upon it very lightly there, but I suppose a good place to start would be like the kind of bread and butter, the automated self-executable smart contracts. So is there any examples that people will be using day to day, like even as a semi-frequent kind of operator in DeFi, and like what does the self-executable smart contracts mean, and how are protocols using it? Is there any kind of cool use cases that you've seen, or what's the more popular use cases of it and stuff like that?
Yes. So first of all, when we say self-executable smart contracts, we programmers always like to do these like abstractions. It's actually always like a bit misleading, because in reality a smart contract can still not self-execute. It's like there's this whole Gelato network that automatically executes smart contract functions for developers and their users, and then we brand this as self-execute or something. That's easy to understand. Oh cool, the smart contract can sort of do something itself. Well, it can't really in reality. You need something like Gelato for that, right? But yeah, that's an abstraction. We call it an abstraction to call it self-execute. It's hiding the complexity a bit. But yeah, so I think first of all, what's important to understand when you think about Gelato, have I used this? How would it look like if I use it as like a normal end user, like I am when I'm going to go DJ and DeFi somewhere or something, right? You probably don't. It's not like you would go to a Uniswap or a PancakeSwap or whatever and sort of, oh, now I'm on Gelato. We did have a UI at some point, but it was mostly to showcase some of our backend technologies. It was called Sorbet, but it's even deprecated now. So it's not like that. Like it's not like using an Aave or something like that. It's like when you're using some of these protocols like Beefy Finance, Yearn Finance, all these guys, there might be certain aspects of this protocol that you're using and you don't even know that it's run by Gelato. So for example, in these yield harvesting, yield farming protocols, a lot of them like Beefy use Gelato every day in the background to collect fields, to recompound interest, to send money around, and you're benefiting from that as a user because you're getting basically APY or whatever it is that is maintained and that is operated by like Gelato automation and so on. Like at least some of these functions are. Certainly Beefy does all of the strategies and so on. Gelato is not a DeFi project. Like Gelato doesn't do DeFi strategies like Beefy does, but Beefy can use Gelato, for example, to upkeep and to operate certain of the certain strategies that need some continuous transactions to be sent to modify the smart contracts that do all the yield farming. So if you are one of like a Beefy user, for example, or a Yearn user, most likely some of the things you've been using in the background were sort of in part powered by Gelato already. And then maybe a very simple use case to realize is, so one of the biggest things in crypto, probably the biggest application, are AMMs like DEXs, like Uniswap, right? And all the forks of Uniswap, PancakeSwap, and so on. And these AMMs allow you to swap tokens instantly. That's amazing in a decentralized fashion. However, what they don't, for example, allow is what you would normally use all the time on a centralized exchange, is like a limit order, right? So a limit order says, hey, look, I want to buy this token, or I want to sell this token at this price. When the price is there, please go and sell it for me. On Kraken or Binance, they run these servers, they have your money. You trust them that, when you input this order in the system, they will actually do it. And guess what? They're usually also doing it because it's in their interest, because you are a customer of theirs and so on. But they have full control there, right? Uniswap doesn't have access to your funds per se. Like the smart contract is immutable logic. It cannot simply go and take like your, at least not the way that Uniswap chose to write it, because they want it to be a non-custodial protocol. It cannot simply like, take your funds and do anything with that. And that's the cool thing about Uniswap, right? Like you don't have to trust it. It just does as you specify it to do. The problem with that is it can also not take your funds by itself at the right time and then execute a trade. A smart contract doesn't know how to do this. So here Gelato comes in, and what Gelato allows you to do is to basically use smart contracts where Gelato still doesn't have access to your funds, other than for executing your trade at exactly the right price that you want. All of this is guaranteed by smart contracts, so that Gelato cannot do anything against what you want. And then Gelato is just a network of nodes off-chain, like they're not smart contracts, they're just servers, and they're incentivized to take your money and execute your trade at the right price, all specified in the smart contract, all safeguarded by the smart contract. If they try to execute your trade at the wrong price, the smart contract wouldn't let it through. But they are incentivized to do that by getting a small reward for this job or this task completion. So that's how now with Gelato on something like Uniswap or on PancakeSwap, you actually have it live on their UI. You can find it there, limit orders, QuickSwap had it, SpookySwap. I think all of these AMMs are now moving to a V3, so it might not be available on the V3, but certainly on this V2, that is still the most used one. There is available limit orders. Some of you listening might have already used a limit order on QuickSwap, PancakeSwap, or something. So this is basically using Gelato in combination with an AMM to just deliver something very simple like a limit order that smart contracts by themselves have a hard time or simply cannot do. But at no point do you lose any of the trustlessness. So at no point do you suddenly have to entrust Gelato with your funds and sort of trust that Gelato will do the right thing. All of this is encoded into smart contracts, so you can exactly specify what Gelato can do, and it cannot do anything else other than this in this limit order example. Now there's other use cases of Gelato, like Web3 Functions, what we launched last year, where we are going a bit more into the realm of oracles and so on. And there's more trust assumptions also on the part of Gelato, but that's a different product. So for our smart contract automation product, you can, if you want to, as it's smart contracts, have a completely trustless automation. And that's what we started with. And limit orders is a good example. Yield farming is a good example, but it's used by many, many other protocols to basically call smart contract functions that, I don't know, need to, I think rebasing tokens like algorithmic stablecoins used it a lot. Send funds around. I don't know, some like NFT use cases like Aavegotchis use it a lot. They have this pet function. So I don't know, you can automatically pet your Aavegotchi once a day to benefit the NFT from that. So yeah, we've seen so many different use cases. It's hard to keep count.
Yeah. So is it effectively set up so it could be fully customizable to whatever automation that the project kind of needs if the use case is there for it? So it's like, what do you guys kind of supply them with? Is it like a toolkit, SDK, or what's that look like?
Yeah. So it's very, very simple. We have a and again, like our idea here is not to have this sort of super techy end user, if this then that UI where you can like automation is fairly complex. So if you like, we don't want you to pick your conditions and then sort of match them together and so on. Like this would be a very sort of niche use case. Like really, if you're a developer building something, then you will like immediately hit some bumps and you will realize, damn, I need a server for this, I need automation for this. Oh wait, how do I do this? And that's where you go to Gelato, and Gelato takes care of it for you. And for that, we have a UI where you can very simply, it's a very nice, I think the best automation sort of product out there. And you can just log in as a developer, you pick your smart contract from your protocol, you pick the function that you want to automate, and then you can configure a bunch of stuff like where the data is coming from, how often this function should be run per day, or maybe you can go more fancy and say like a certain condition on chain that you want to specify when this function should be called. Like with limit orders, hey, when the price of your token goes here, then please execute this trade for this trader. So yeah, we have an UI for that, and we have a smart contract protocol. And then the biggest part of Gelato is this off-chain network of nodes. Here we are decentralizing. It's not just us running these nodes. There's more professional node operators in the network running them, and we're adding them as we go. Like the vision of Gelato every year is to add more nodes to the network, become more decentralized. So you get all of this sort of node operation, security, decentralization out of the box, and it's very easy to integrate with smart contract protocol, where at the end of the day, you just need to go to a UI and say, hey, please call my smart contract. Here's the data I need to be posted, and this is when it should be called. And you go, you click submit, and magically the network will pick up your task, and from then on out, start serving your application based on your specification.
Yeah, I was trying to explain it to our marketing guy who we only brought in from the dark and gloomy Web2 world last year, so I'm trying to get him up to speed. I was just saying, just think of it like I couldn't think of like the best real world example, so I likened it to like a Zapier or a Zapier, however you want to call it. So like automation across apps and things like that. And he was just like, all right, it's starting to make a bit more sense now. And I think
absolutely,
I actually
Yeah, Zapier, I think it's called, like,
yeah.
That is the most sort of common Web2 example that we also like to cite as one. But I think in general, like Web3 end users, but also Web2 people have sometimes a hard time understanding it, maybe because in Web2 it's just a given. Everything in Web2 is normally like it's a server, right? Like every Web2 page we use or something, most of this is like a server. And there it's just normal server stuff. It's like JavaScript and databases and all of these things. Like we're not using blockchains, we're not using smart contracts there. So you can build these software as a service applications out of the box, and they're all super automated and so on. It all works like it's so normal. Like but in Web3, it's not. In Web3, the backend is blockchains and smart contracts, so we don't have this persistence, like infinitely running programs there. We have these constrained finite smart contract runtimes, and there it's like missing. And then like it's like pretty weird, because in Web2 it's all over the place and you just take it for granted, so you don't really realize it. But bringing that same level of user experience, that same level of application power to Web3 is basically what Gelato does.
Yeah, so I suppose, like, how much can you guys take from that with regards to kind of a product development standpoint? And like, by that I mean, is there enough kind of Web2 products that should have, or something akin to it should have, a place in Web3? And is it for you guys, is it just like looking at all that kind of good stuff and being like, how the hell do we build this in a kind of in a blockchain space and stuff like that? So does it open up like your product development line just like far beyond trying to solve the problems that are, as you say, so accustomed in the Web2 landscape, and then being able to transpose them into this kind of weird and wonderful world of crypto and DeFi?
Yeah, so certainly one thing we are hoping to do with this project is to bring DeFi applications, like Web3 applications, up to a level where they can truly compete with the user experience of Web2 applications. Because usually, if you think about it, when we use DeFi stuff and so on, usually it's like a trade-off. It's like it's usually more clunky, slow, more expensive than like a centralized version, a Web2 version of this. But we do it because it's crypto, it's more secure, like it's a blockchain, so it's self-custodial. We don't have to trust someone like I don't know, a shady fintech site with our money. It's like supposed to, at least, like, of course there can be exploits and bugs, but what this technology does really well, it's really good at giving you power over your money and data, and not giving that into the hands of someone who could lose it. And that's the great part. But we've seen, like, at least in the most part, we've seen applications that are not as scalable, that are much slower, that are clunkier than the Web2 parts, and we lose a lot of users this way to centralized versions. We've seen this with Celsius and so on, right? Or like Binance, the exchange itself. Like most people in the South America and so on, they're not really using Web3. They're all using Web2 like technology, like Binance, the exchange, to interact with crypto, but they're not really in crypto. And I think with Gelato, what we want to do is automation was the first piece we built, and it's really important for Web3 application developers to use and build automations into their smart contracts and protocols. But there's more. Like we also have Gassless and relaying, and we're going like Web3 functions, which is like serverless and sort of like connecting data with your smart contracts. So I guess you could also call it oracles. It's a bit more in that direction. And we have many more ideas in the future also for like, for blockchain developers, like they want to launch an app specific chain that can sort of launch with Gelato, batteries included out of the box. So I guess the mission here is to build an infrastructure layer for Web3 application developers that basically makes the applications look and feel way more like a Web2 application in terms of speed and in terms of user experience. Like this whole, hey, you have to log in with your wallet, you need to have crypto in your wallet to do anything, you have to pay for everything you do, to send a trade or buy an NFT. Like all of this has to go away if we want to go mainstream. And we want to build technology, and we're on our way to build a technology that sort of does that, allows that for application developers, while also not just being a single company with a server that if it goes down, everything that uses Gelato is down. No, like we're also building this in this sort of Web3 ethos of decentralization, resilience, like a network of nodes. Yeah, that's the mission here. So we're on a very long-term mission. We've been there for 4 years. We've made a good dent. We've gotten like a lot of adoption, but I'm usually thinking like 10 to 20 years terms on the Gelato roadmap as well as for this space. So there's still a long way to go.
Love it. I think you started steering the conversation to where I really wanted to take it next, and I've seen a few tweets with regards to you guys and Gnosis, or Safe as they're called now. What is the kind of Gassless wallet account abstraction landscape like, and how are you guys kind of playing into that? I've seen it. We've done a bit of research behind the scenes, obviously having to keep up with what people are talking about and what like kind of emerging trends and emerging kind of tech is. But I'd just like to hear it straight from the source, effectively, how you guys are going to play a good part in that.
Yeah. So actually, this is coming back full circle to where what I said in the beginning, that Gnosis basically allowed Hilmar, my co-founder, and I to start Gelato in 2019, and we've since then been very close to the team. We certainly for longer times haven't shipped anything together with them, but actually in the last 2 years, Gelato has built a great what we call a transaction relay service, or a meta transaction relay service. If you're a bit more technical, you might know what that is. And essentially what it is just a very reliable, scalable infrastructure once more that allows websites, whatever, front-end applications, back-end applications that like in crypto to reliably execute many transactions for their users. And instead of sending the transaction directly, you relay these transactions via the Gelato network. That just means that you don't have to own the Ethereum account to send all of these transactions and pay for them. You can offload them to Gelato. Why would you do this? Well, Gelato is extremely specialized at getting them mined reliably, quickly on many, like 20 different networks. You can, like, if you're a big application with hundreds or thousands of users, you might have, I don't know, hundreds of transactions at any given moment of time that want to be mined on chain, and actually it gets very hard to manage that. Blockchains don't make it so easy to do that. So Gelato does that for you, and we have a very cool Relay API for that. This is just a normal Web2 API that you can use, and you get access to this sort of Web3 backend of Gelato Relay, which puts your transactions on chain. And there's many more other tools we ship with this. So for like a year ago, we shipped One Balance. This is basically a really cool system where right now, if you want to send a transaction on BNB and on Avalanche, you need to have AVAX token on Avalanche, you need to have BNB on BNB, and it also gets super messy, right? Like, I don't have anything in my wallet. I need to now, before I can do anything suddenly, and where do I get my BNB? I need to maybe register somewhere. On super cumbersome. Like, you have to go through so many steps sometimes to do anything in crypto, which is completely unacceptable to the mainstream, right? So One Balance is a good step in that direction, where you completely decouple this payment for transactions from actually sending them. So you can now today use, as an application, you can use Gelato Relay together with One Balance. You can top up USDC on Polygon, for example. So you just maintain one USDC balance on Polygon, and you get access to transaction sending on all these networks for your users. So for example, Connext, like a bridging protocol like Connext, they use Gelato with One Balance. They just pay Gelato Relay us with USDC on Polygon, and all of the bridge transactions, all of the gas that the Connext users are consuming, Gelato basically pays for, it sends these transactions, and then settles against the single USDC balance on Polygon. So this is like an amazing abstraction. And in the same vein, we basically launched we dabbled a bit with account abstraction. And account abstraction really is combining what I just described, this transaction relaying, so that like you don't have to send your transaction anymore. A relayer does it for you. Ideally, you can also pay the relayer in a different form, like, or maybe not at all. Like some applications simply want to sponsor the transaction for their users. So combining this with a smart contract wallet like the Safe is basically account abstraction today already. Like now you can, like, we have the super cool demo where you can log in with your Google account, you get like a wallet with Web3 auth in the background, and you can like click on a button to mint an NFT. Whereas before you would have to get onboarded with MetaMask, write down your private key somewhere, all of these horrible things, buy crypto, like maybe wait a week until you get approved on Binance, like to mint like a free NFT of, I don't know, maybe some Renault, the car company, used this, for example, or something similar, drop, right? So here we partnered with the Safe team. We are basically providing, the Gelato is providing the Safe smart contract wallet with this amazing multi-chain relay technology and the one balance system, and Safe is this amazing smart contract wallet system and interface for users. And yeah, I mean, stay tuned for that. I think there's soon going to be, there's an SDK for developers, but soon also on the UI. I think Safe, if you're using the Safe multisig UI, you will maybe soon realize some new features that are powered by Gelato, in the camp of, you know, sending a transaction without having to pay for it at the same time and so on. So yeah, that's coming up, and also we partnered there with Coinbase when they launched their OP chain, the base chain, simply because I believe Coinbase is very bullish on user experience. They have their own wallet as well, the Coinbase wallet, and they just saw that Safe and Gelato are amazing partners to bring like this next level of gasless sort of user experience also to users on their chain. But by no means is this technology restricted, this account abstraction sort of gasless technology restricted to just the Coinbase chain. We're already live with it on all the other chains, Ethereum, Polygon, Optimism, Gnosis chain, all these. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, isn't it? Like there was kind of some backlash with the Coinbase like announcement, and I think it's just people like the people at the margins like to shout the loudest and all that kind of good stuff. But like, I think they have over 100 million verified users, maybe even a little bit more than that. I think DeFi's got a couple of million at best, actual active users. So you're looking at, if you're onboarding 2% of that user base, that verified user base, into the space, that effectively the DeFi user base doubles. And for me, that's we need that kind of ease of onboarding. I mean, the Coinbase wallet is pretty good for if you're kind of a beginner and trying to onboard that way. So, how, in your opinion, how far off are we from that? What you'd expect crypto to be from a user experience perspective. So, like, if we're comparing it to, I don't know, a fintech app or something like that, how far away are we from
that? So I think we're gaining speed in the right direction. So you see a lot of account abstraction getting a lot of hype also with this ERC 4337 thing. I have my opinions on that, but in overall it's like a very, very good endeavor, and it could actually, if it goes well, then I'm also a fan of this. So I think we all realized like last bull run, wait a second, like, why is no one staying after the bull run and so on? It's because it's still like, or why, like, it's still way too complex to even do anything in crypto. And only the degens, that really want to, I don't know, make some money or buy this NFT or whatever it is, like, only they are willing to expend these hours getting on board and so on. But if you just quickly want to do something, quickly have a look, have a peek, right? Like, you're not going to do it because it's too complex, right? So I think enough people realize this now. And now we have scalable blockchains finally with Polygon, like zkEVM, the optimistic rollups. Still not perfect, could be a lot cheaper and better, but that can't be the excuse anymore. There's cheap blockchains out there now, right? So people realize, okay, wait, this stuff is way cheaper now, but still not enough people are using it. It's actually because there's not enough tooling and applications around it. And so I think that's what people realize, that and account abstraction is just this thing where, okay, we can onboard users without forcing them into buying crypto and setting up a wallet, or at least like the wallet setup is done like sort of hidden from them and in a more user-friendly manner. So I think enough people realize this for there to be momentum now. I would still say that it will take time to reach sort of user experience level of Web2 apps, simply because there needs to be a lot of standardization around smart contract wallets. I mean, smart contract wallets, Argent and so on, have been around for years, but why aren't they adopted? Well, there's problems, right? So once these problems are solved, they still have to be solved on a technological level, on a standards level. But once that's the case, and I would say that's gonna happen in the next year, then in like a year from now, I would hope, and I would be quite optimistic that user experience is much better. And when the next bull run comes, who knows? I would think that by then we have amazing user experiences using things like Safe, using Gelato for gasless transactions, and many other things. Yeah.
What's I think you hinted at that. What's your, if you want to get into it, your opinion on EIP 4337? Do you think there's another EIP that could be better for taking the account abstraction path forward, or?
I mean, I'm more bullish now on it than in the beginning, for sure. And certainly there's this aspect, the social movement around it, which has merits as well. Like, if no matter if you have any technical issues or something, any technical criticisms of something, if it wants to be a standard and enough people rally behind it and want to adopt it, then it's fulfilling the purpose of being a standard pretty well. And we can see that already. So that a standard by no means is usually the best technology. Usually, like, standardized technologies, there's other things out there that are better, but they aren't the standard, right? So the early phase, I would say I had my sort of technical issues with it. I think it might be a bit over engineered. I think it's a bit questionable whether this has to live at the protocol, sort of client level. Because nowadays you can achieve something like a user experience like this already by using Gelato network and a Safe, for example, or another smart contract. Well, this like account abstraction already exists. I mean, sure, yeah, there also hasn't been adopted in this form and way, but basically you could build tooling around this without having to go and sort of ask every Ethereum node to run this sort of special new code. Which, the more code you add to the Ethereum node, it wants to be a decentralized network, the more risk is there that there's bugs in the code that might lead to downtime on the network or so. So I'm posing the question a bit of, do we really have, it's basically just a sort of meta transaction specification, ERC-4337, very similar to what Gelato does already. Why does this have to live at the node level? The answer would be because it might be more open, more decentralized. But yeah, so I think that's my question. That's sort of my quarrel with it. But again, I'm if it works, if it actually works, and if it's not a problem and it's not causing bugs and downtime at the node level, then it's I think a very honorable, very good thing. And then it will actually be a more open sort of transaction relay system. It will be very decentralized, and that's a good thing. So I'm rooting more for it with time, and certainly there's enough momentum behind it now to actually qualify as a standard, and we'll see. I'm certainly not trying to fight against it. Like, I would actually, as Gelato as well, we will look at the ERC-4337. We already have plans. Our one balance system is the perfect system to be a paymaster for ERC-4337 applications. So we will do work on that, and we will see how it develops. And if it gets adopted, then we will be all over it, and we will help making this more usable and so on.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. What you were saying about sometimes often the best standard is not adopted. For me personally, I kind of just wait for it to get picked up and run with, and then I can start paying attention for it, because I don't have any influence over anything that's getting pushed forward there. So, is it a meritocracy when it comes to that kind of stuff? Is there kind of internal politics at play, not just in the Ethereum, but across industry? Is it how do you kind of look at that from someone who's more technical based to an ape like me?
It's a very good question you ask, and I would say it's probably a very sort of political, contentious question. So I do think Ethereum is the best sort of open community out there. I do truly believe it's the most open, sort of decentralized community. But there's certainly some bureaucracy, and there are the powers that be. So it's not like this everything rainbows, unicorn, everybody has the same chances and so on. Like, there are people in Ethereum that have more powers and more say than others. And certainly if you're know Vitalik, and if you're a friend of Vitalik, I'm pretty sure that you have higher chances of getting your EIP adopted than others, or maybe even be considered as something, right? Like, for sure, I mean, humans are humans at the end of the day, right? And that's just normal. So I do believe that, I mean, some of it might be seen in ERC 4337 as well, where if someone else that wasn't in the EF had authored this and proposed this, they would probably be scrutinized a lot more, and it would be like, what the hell, like this is way too over-engineered, no way. So I do think there's some element of, okay, like Vitalik signed off on this, and someone from the EF authored this, so let's give this like maybe a not so critical look and more chance, which also might be good, like it doesn't mean that the author is bad or anything. They might be doing a good job. So just because they are in the network doesn't mean they're bad, right? They more likely actually means they want good for Ethereum. So why not? But certainly, I mean, there's certainly people that have spent more time with Ethereum developers and the right people, and more bootlicking, if you will, right? Like, and they will have more chances and more opportunity because of that. And whether that's fair or not, I don't know. I think it's just the way the world works, and that's
I think it's
the way
same across all industries, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the same across any industry.
And certainly Ethereum is still one of the communities in the internet where you, as anyone, have the best chance. If you don't know anyone, I think you just have to be there and you have to prove yourself. And there's many committees you have to go through before you get anything sort of considered or included. But that's a good, process for a mature network. So yeah, I think it's good.
Cool. So to pivot slightly, can we, if you want to get into it, can we kind of explain to the audience the whole gel token? Is there any kind of utility on the horizon? I know we mentioned like kind of decentralization. Does it play into that? And kind of just, what are you guys thinking at the minute? Like what's on your mind with regards to the token?
Yeah, 1 second. I was just quickly have to click something here. Well, sorry about that, because I was, you might have heard it, but I got a lot of alerts. So, okay.
No worries. I know you can just cut that bit.
Yeah, sorry for that. Okay, but that's done now, so hopefully there won't be any more beeping. All right, cool.
No worries.
So yeah, the token. So I mean, the token has been part of Gel token has been part of Gelato Network's mission and vision from the start, because Gelato Network is a sort of network that needs a sustainable economy for its node operators in order for the network to reach its true potential of being the decentralized backbone of Web3 applications on all the chains. There needs to be an equilibrium and a self-sustaining economy. And the way to basically deliver this is by, for example, in the early stage, simply giving access to providing services on the network via token staking, for example, right? So the token here acts as a utility for node operators to be able to even offer their service on the network. Why do they need the token? Why do they need to stake the token? Well, this is a good proxy of they're invested in the network, sort of they're, they have skin in the game. And they don't just come to spam the network or something. They wanna actually, they're aligned with the network. That's the most basic utility infrastructure token use case here. And we also see other things for this token, like applications, communities. They can stake for node operators, maybe node operators that have a good reputation, so on, to secure the network. And to service the network. And also, I think once Gelato reaches sort of escape velocity and this sort of critical mass, there might be cases where Gelato is really sending all of the transactions in a blockchain at some point. Like, certainly I could see this happening where, instead of users or developers interfacing directly with a blockchain, which comes with all sorts of complexity and ugliness, and they go via like a second layer network like Gelato that handles a lot of complexity and error handling and so on for them. So at some point, Gelato could be sort of used by everyone to send transactions on chain in a still like, not in a scary way that Gelato has all the power. Like, if Gelato went down or malicious or something, it would be easily swappable. But the idea is, like, as long as Gelato works and is up, which is what we do and what we specialize in, and that's the whole part, the whole point of it. Then you could totally see scenarios where Gelato would be basically the entry point to blockchains for applications and users to send transactions, to automate transactions, to send data on chain, all of this. And at that point, given that blockchains have constrained space, you might also, you might have special needs like, hey, I really need this transaction to be included in the next block or so. So there at this point, we also see the token as something where, people can express their preferences, applications can express their preferences. Maybe we allow applications to stake, and if they have higher stake, they can jump the queue on something like this, because at the time when not all transactions can be included at once that are in a queue, you have to wonder who comes first, right? And so here the token could also be used, for example.
Just as, I guess, just how I'm thinking about that. So, I don't know if there's like a useless mint of like the 10,000th PFP collection happening on chain, but there's also like a mass liquidation on Aave, for example.
Exactly.
You're gonna want that prioritized. Is that like the
Exactly. So if you're an application that uses Gelato on a chain, and that Gelato like is basically posting most of the transactions in a block on average, you might be like, okay, I don't want to be stuck in the Gelato queue with every other NFT project out there and whatnot, right? Like I want to have some sort of priority lane, and there you can then stake the token to basically be like in a priority queue where maybe if your transactions hit Gelato, they get in first, right? Together with other priority sort of stakers. So this is like I think a huge use case for the token. And then also in the future, like we already have a DAO forum. It's not that active. We already have sort of sometimes polls, votes, and so on. They're not binding, but we still want to interact with the community, like hear what they have to say on in this part. But in the future, I would see this DAO aspect to become way more important than it is today. Once this is a fully decentralized open network, and that's our goal. Like we want to build Gelato to become like this fully decentralized open network. We're already decentralized today, but it's a spectrum, right? Like, and we want to move further to be more openness, more decentralization, and at some point, the governance of this network, so important parameters, onboarding of node operators, other decisions that are crucial to everybody servicing and using this network, relying on it, they should also be, I think, handled in like sort of a democratic vote, and the token will be there one form of distributing votes on this and assigning powers of decision there. Yes.
What happens in like? So I'm kind of I didn't think this was going to happen, but I'm more and more leaning towards going further towards like an app chain thesis. And I think with the OP stack and what Arbitrum's is Origin, I think it's called. If there becomes a world where like, I don't know, some applications get an extreme traction on a layer 2 and they're like, we should just have our own app chain. Like a GMX, maybe GMX has its own chain because it's dominating the Arbitrum at the minute. Is there a point in time where, one, how adaptable is Gelato to be able to support like if GMX chain, like this hypothetical GMX chain was to be launched, and two, what does the onboarding process look like there for them being able to tap into like the Gelato network? Is it completely permissionless? Does the Gel token play a part in? Yeah, we want to onboard the GMX chain, but we don't want to onboard Shibarium, like the Shiba swap LT or whatever it is. Like, what? I know that's a lot of like hypothetical thinking, but I just try.
You're right on the money with the question. It's a very good question. So we also I would say in general subscribe to the app chain sort of thesis. We see it playing out, and for me, there's a lot of interesting blockchain use cases where it simply doesn't make sense to have all of the security that you normally have on an Ethereum or so. Like you don't need it. You need something else from a blockchain, not just this sort of security. Or you just simply want to have a sort of database that is well linked in the blockchain world for whatever reason. So yeah, we also believe that this might be the future playing out here already. We already see instances of app chain thesis playing out, right? Like with all the like OP chains and Avalanche subnets and I think Polygon supernets or something. So a very good question. So we currently you would still rely on Gelato, like the development company that I'm a part of, to deploy Gelato to that chain and to sort of set it up for you. For us, this process it's not that long. Like we need a day or so to add a new network, and then we're there. But we actually definitely want to work hard on making this, first of all, much faster, so that even for us to launch a new network permissioned by us, it would take like only hours or an hour. And then we also want to have it be self-serviceable at some point, ideally, so that if you want to launch your own blockchain, like I could totally see this happening in the future, like literally you have a use case, you have a game or something, and you don't care about all the fancy crypto stuff. You just want to have a blockchain for whatever reason. Let's not judge at this point whether there's better technologies or not. I don't care. Like you want it, and yeah, you probably like there's this saying, I think, from the optimism community that like blockchains or OP chains are like the new ERC20. So just like you were able to spin up a token now as a developer in a matter of hours or less, in the future you'll be able to launch your blockchain with like, you know, in a matter of an hour. And I believe a lot of developers will like that and actually use that and build cool stuff with that. So in this world, we really want them to be able to launch with Gelato as well. And all of this will then have to be a dynamic sort of automated process where I envision them basically clicking like a button, and maybe on the AWS console, the blockchain goes live. It's hosted on AWS. It's not decentralized, but whatever. They don't need that. They don't want that. And just in the same vein, Gelato picks this up. It's also deployed on their chain. All of the Gelato services, APIs, relay APIs, automation, data services, all of this stuff is immediately available and serviced by the Gelato network. Maybe there will be a part of the Gelato network that focuses more on like the main chains, the DeFi chains, and so on. And then there will be another part that is sort of a bit more centralized, maybe that is servicing all these little chains. I could see that also, like there being a split or something. But certainly we believe that this is a very certainly we believe there will be many, many more chains, and we definitely want to support all of them, and we want to be on them as quickly as possible, and ideally make it so that you don't even need to wait for us. You can just, you know, deploy Gelato yourself, and we run it for you.
Yeah, I met what kind of envisaged that, and so I'm really glad you said that. But even taking it to like the further extreme from that, I met quite recently the team from AltLayer. And they were talking about, as you were just saying, kind of being able to spin these layer 2 rollups up in a matter of hours or whatever it is. But then they were also talking about elastic rollups. So let's say you want to have a roll, like its own specific rollup for an NFT mint, and then once it's done, you can kind of decommission it and things like that. So it's going to get really crazy really quick. And I think you guys are in the picks and shovels business, you know, like with the whole like gold rush. And I think the kind of infrastructure projects, particularly from like a lot of the degenerates, just goes completely over their head. But when you start digging down into it, and as you say, if you have a long enough time horizon, it just makes complete sense. So I'm kind of glad you guys are leading the charge, because I've met a couple of members from the team now, and everyone seems really, really nice. So I feel like we're in good hands.
Thanks.
Before I wrap it up, I should have asked this in the middle. So with regards to pushing towards the Web3 function product, are you guys angling to position yourselves as just, I don't know, an Oracle solution? Can we kind of touch on what that actually means if people have heard that terminology get thrown around? And I suppose your main competitor must be the likes of Chainlink or something like that, if that gives people a high level overview of what you guys will be pushing. But is there any kind of differentiation, or is it just you're kind of at this point now where you can provide that infrastructure, so you might as well go ahead and go and do it?
Yeah, so basically, actually, interesting story with Chainlink is they actually competed with us. They sort of took the idea that we pioneered of smart contract automation, and eventually, initially, they actually really strongly supported us and gave us all the good Chainlink treatment and so on, which was actually quite nice. And eventually, I think they realized, wait a second, what these guys are building is pretty amazing. let's also do it, and it makes sense, right? Like it makes sense for them to do that. And recently, last year, we launched our Web3 Functions. Initially, it was called Off-Chain Resolvers. Now we rebranded it to Web3 Functions. And there is similarly, I think, Chainlink sort of monitored that, picked up on that, and launched a competitor to that in some shape or form. It's not like an exact fork or copy, right? Like they definitely do their own work there as well. But sort of the idea is similar, which is the I think Chainlink Functions they call it, which, you know, is also very similar to Gelato Automate and so on. Chainlink Automate. But anyways, so we're definitely interested. Like we see this playing out, and Chainlink like looking at us and trying to compete with us. And I think it's only logical that we will do the same in the future with oracles, where they were sort of before us. And we already see a lot of our users and sort of products really going more and more into the oracles section. And Web3 Functions, by the way, just quickly, is the next evolution of Gelato, where in the previous version of Gelato Automate, you were able to automate everything on chain, but you were only able to use sort of on-chain data. And now with Web3 Functions, we allow every developer to write a script that uses any API out there, Web2, whatever, any data, and post that to your smart contract automatically, maybe once a day or whatever other conditions. So really, we're now bridging this gap between Web3 and Web2, and now you can use Gelato to connect your smart contracts to Web2 data and APIs. It's not like this sort of price feed product that Chainlink has, like where it's super robust sort of decentralized price feeds. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give developers a lot of sort of customizability and power over like any API they want to use in their smart contract. But we're certainly also looking down the hall of decentralization there. We definitely want to do a lot more there on this front. And yeah, I can totally see us there like doing more and more on the Oracle fronts in the next coming years. And I think that's long overdue in DeFi that someone does it again, because at the end of the day, DeFi isn't really DeFi. Like all of Aave and so on, or like all of these guys are basically just Chainlink oracles in the back end.
Single point of failure, yeah.
Single point of failure. Like we've been lying to ourselves, like maybe with the exception of Uniswap. So at least there should be some competition in this market, not just this crazy monopoly that's almost like already behaving like Microsoft in the 90s and Google and super aggressive and so on, right? Like so no way, like that's not why we're here, right? So I think if you believe in DeFi, if you believe in crypto, you must also believe that there's not just one Oracle sort of provider network. And taking that to its conclusion means that there's room for others and maybe for better ones, and that's what we're aspiring to become as well. And yes, totally. So I guess you could see Gelato as the next Chainlink, yeah, if you wanna take this angle.
I'll take it like that. I think I've included it in my article as a as kind of tongue in cheek, but that should be out next week if anyone's wondering where it is. But is there anything we've missed, do you think? Hopefully
No, I think that was a lot. I mean, I can babble on forever, but no, I think that's good. That's a wrap, I would say.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for your time. And if where's the best place for people, if people are listening to it? You got a Discord people can jump into? Where do you want kind of people to be directed towards, I suppose?
I think nowadays our Discord is definitely the best space, both for developers and non-developers who are interested in Gelato. Jump into the Discord. We also have a Telegram sort of community chat. If you're a developer, check out gelato.network, the website. You'll find documentation, tutorials, everything there. Our Twitter is @GelatoNetwork. My Twitter, by the way, is @Gitpusha. I think the name is on display here on the bottom left of my tile. And Twitter, Discord, Gelato everywhere.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave all that in the description as well below. But Lewis, thanks again for your time. And if anyone's watching, if you want like a kind of high-level overview of what we've just talked about, the article should be out next week, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Cool.
But yeah, I think further down the line, towards the end of the year as well, I'm sure you guys will have shipped a lot of interesting products, so let's do it again. Always happy to host, so just say the word and we'll sort it out.
Let's do it. Thanks.
All right, well, take it easy.